This time we're going to look at 20,000 Days on Earth and see how it breaks from the conventions of what we might expect from a documentary, and also how it plays games with what we call the reflexive nature of film. I also want to look at how the sequence uses digital technology in a very playful and interesting way. This scene in particular completely rejects what we might consider any cliches of the documentary, and particularly the rockumentary. Whereas many rock documentaries might try to use archive footage in a way that presents the star behind the mask, this film is much more interested in presenting the mask and how that reveals a sort of truth underneath. If you have any understanding of Greek theatre or any mask theatre, you might be aware of how the donning of a mask could be used to present an inner truth by excluding different elements of the personality to really focus on one aspect. To a certain extent, this film is doing that. It's also quite arch in the way that it both uses and then undercuts the reflexive nature of film. It's presenting us with a collision of different aesthetics, and as we go along I'll explain what I mean by that. This is all very clever and I think deliberately aligns with Cave's core audience, which is frankly probably on the whole like me, middle-aged, and people who like to think of themselves as intellectual. In this scene, Cave describes the first time he met his future wife, Susie Bick, and the erotic desires this prompted in him. This is entirely in opposition to what we might call the observational mode, the fly-on-the-wall style of documentary, where the filmmaker tries to be unobtrusive and presents a sense of reality, perhaps using a slightly shaky handheld camera to try and create a captured image as if we've somehow arrived at a truth. The whole setup, particularly in this scene, is striking contrast to that. It's overtly cinematic and highly composed. This little sequence here opens with lens flare, but the scene is characterised by smooth tracking shots, a steely blue colour palette, and a very deliberately constructed mise-en-scène. The Nick Cave archive is fictitious in this film, though apparently there is a real one out there that has been halted by coronavirus, so it's due to open. We see objects from Cave's past that have been curated as if in an exhibition. Notice the fella in the white gloves suggesting the importance of this. As in many occasions throughout the film, the mise-en-scène focuses on the idea of analogue. Key props are a reel-to-reel tape recording, an old TV, very old slide projectors. In other scenes we get paperback books. Essentially the media we see are old and reflective of the past. We focus on photographs and handwritten journals, whereas the style of the shooting is very, very digital. This is a low to medium budget film, but it's using HD digital technology to look as strikingly cinematic and expensive as possible, and it succeeds. So here we see very high contrast lighting. The non-diegetic sound you can hear is clearly digitally recorded. It's obviously synthesized as a soundtrack. And think about the artificial nature of this sequence. Cave is played an audio clip as if it's part of the archive, yet it then becomes the soundtrack. He's listening to it. I'd suggest that this is written specifically for the film, and just like so many other things in the film that challenge the nature of documentary, this is all artificial. And if we listen carefully to the voiceover, it shifts in the grain of the recording, as if it's somehow shifting from an old tape onto this very high definition digital recording. In this shot here we see Cave very posed, looking off screen towards what is presumably the image of Susie being projected on the wall. It's a highly composed image. Again, very, very different from the observational fly-on-the-wall mode. In the background behind him, we can see an old TV screen showing images of what it is he's talking about. So all the names he's mentioning there, you can see faces to go with them flash up, as if the old TV in the background of this shot is part of his thought process. Clearly he wasn't spontaneously played this audio recording and the TV just happened to match. All very, very staged. Taking this montage, similarly to the one that opens the film, collating and editing all this archive footage is made possible via digital editing. It would be possible through old-style analogue editing, but it would take an absolute age. And here we see this extremely rapid montage. It's somehow scattergun and fluid at the same time. These overlapping images, and it all builds up into this moment where the bomb goes off very shortly. In contrast to that montage, we've got the slow, fluid crab movement of the camera as it tracks right. So again, there's this juxtaposition between the grainy, the rough, the old-fashioned. Memory is analog, the present is digital. So the camera does a slow zoom into the TV screen, and the image from the TV screen provides us with this collision of images, and it's a clash of high and low culture. In there we see Carl Theodor Dreyer's The Passion of Joan of Arc contrasted with page 3 girls from the tabloid newspapers. Further digital manipulation of the image as the montage plays. We see these distortions and this mock pixelated look. We've got more distortion, again digital, on the sound, where we have multiple overlaps of sound and image, digital echo, again all contrasting with the high definition shots of Cave in the present. It's deliberately climactic. What he's describing is this erotic sensation, which of course has to build up to a climax, and the whole montage ends with a bang. A highly cinematic moment, and very much in contrast to what we might expect from the observational mode of documentary. So there's a continuation of the old pixelated look, as if there's something wrong with the transmission, trying to get through to an old style aerial. As we transition into the next scene, we see that there's little buzzes and distortions there. So overall, in this scene, we can see the collision between digital and analogue, which forms the aesthetic of the whole documentary. We see manipulation of reality and real challenge to what audiences might expect as part of the documentary form.